Welcome back to Roaming with Restless Women. Today I have a very, very experienced, wise woman with me. Her name is Janice Braithwaite. She's an award-winning healthcare workforce leader, organizational structure, culture strategist, and certified executive and life coach with over 17 years of experience helping mission-driven organizations build people-first workplace cultures. As the founder and CEO of Workplace Transformations, she developed the signature workplace transformation method, a proven five-part framework that helps leaders identify and address cultural misalignment to improve retention, engagement, and organizational performance. She was named Employer Partner of the Year by Operation Able, and she has worked with health centers, Fortune 500 companies, including Xerox, Motorola, and Procter& Gamble, just to name a few. She holds a master's degree in management from Cambridge College and is certified in lean methodologies and organizational culture assessments. Her thought leadership has been featured on podcasts like Reach Radio, HD Hyman, and Notes on Resilience. She also publishes the Culture Catalyst, a monthly newsletter on LinkedIn. So make sure and look that one up. Based in Salem, Massachusetts, Janice brings both strategic insight and lived experience to her work, grounded in her belief that everyone deserves to be seen, heard, and supported in the workplace. Welcome, Janice. I'm so happy to have you.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for interacting with me. Great.
Well, do me a favor and tell me how you got started in the cultural misalignment space because it is definitely needed, that's for sure.
Well, I asked myself one question. Why haven't things gotten better for employees?
Mm,
I've been out here in the workplace a long time, and there were ups and downs, and it doesn't seem like there's any steadiness to the improvement. I said to myself, there's got to be a reason behind this. So I started doing some research, and that's when I kind of got involved with organizational culture
hmm
because it is truly the foundation of the organization you work in. So I said, I think there's something here. I hear a little bit about this, but I don't hear a lot. So in 2019, I started the framework for this company, but COVID came along, and I was actually working in healthcare at the time. So there
Oh,
was no time
oh,
to do anything except,
oh.
you know, like to put your finger in the dike to keep the flood from coming. So I kind of put it to the side. And then I left my organization in 2023. And I said to myself, you're either going to do this or you're not. You've got to make a decision because it's been sitting there, waiting for something to happen. So, you know
Yes.
what? I'm going to go all in. And that's how it all started.
Wow. Well, I think you hit on exactly one of the things that matters the most in organizations is that cultural misalignment. So talk to me a little bit about what that means to you and where you've seen that out in the real world, if you will.
Well, cultural misalignment is really you have the foundation of the organization, and I look at it this way: it's like a regular foundation with bricks. And in that foundation, there could be those bricks could be cracked. Sometimes it
Mm,
shifts, and it therefore makes the building unstable. So that's basically what happens in an organization when those cracks are not addressed and fixed. The organization becomes unstable, and they're all over the place. They don't go in, they're going left, they're going right. They don't know there's no consistency to it because there's something else that's causing this, and no one has really looked at it and found out what it is.
and how do you approach an organization where what kind of symptoms are you seeing specifically, and then how do you approach them with your five-step framework?
Well, there are two that I look at. These came out of assessments that I did over time. And the two most things that are rated always low uh,
Mm,
recognition and communication. Two things. And I mean, it's pretty consistent across all organizations that that's what's going on. So what I try to do, what I do actually is I always start from the top down.
Yes.
I start with the CEO because if the CEO isn't on board, it's going to be just a lot of talk and nothing happening. And then I go down to the senior leadership team, and then I try to get a feel for the organization. As I go through each layer, I find out something new about the organization. And by the time you get to the front line, they're pretty straightforward. They know what's going on.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and they'll tell you.
They're more than tell you.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's a real disconnect from the top and the bottom. Like oftentimes I'll hear a CEO say, everything's fine. We're doing really well. And then I get down 2 layers and it's like, no, we have a lot of disruption and people
Mm.
bring things in, but they're not allowing people to get trained. So it's a lot of different things, but mostly around communication.
What have you found? I know that I have a hard time being a change management practitioner.
Hmm.
I go into organizations much like you do. Culture is one of the things that I look at, but I'm also looking at, what is this big upheaval that they're proposing on doing?
Right,
And how do you translate what you're feeling? Because I know when you say I get a feel for, I know
right.
what that means. Um, those who are maybe less intuitive than those of us who work with human beings may not quite understand what that means. But you do get a feel for
Hmm.
how things work. What are the norms? What are the things that you get punished for,
Right.
in an organization? All of that breeds into culture. How do you address those really hard things that you find out back up to the executives who seem to be oblivious?
Well, one of the things I suggest is you do a comprehensive assessment of your culture. And I work with a company called Human Synergistics. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but
No,
they're
I haven't, but I'm going to look
top,
now.
top. I think they are one of the top, if not the top, assessment company around organizational culture. So I really encourage them to do that. Then,
Hmm.
I get the data back and all the information, and I look at areas that need improvement, and I put together. I hate to use these words, but a playbook for them, and so that they know these are the things. Because if you're trying to fix everything at the same time, let's do
Yeah.
the top 5 things or the top 3 things. Work on those and see how that goes. Because if you try to,
Mhm.
like eating an elephant, it's one bite at a time. And if you don't do that, you start to get fragmented. The whole thing is
Right.
fragmented. I'll tell you a funny story about see what a CEO said to me one time.
Okay.
So I was talking to him about something that was going on, and he said, You know, we did a whole renovation on this place, and all the people did was complain, and nothing was right. And I said, Well, I know a little bit about the renovation because I happen to know somebody at that company. And I said, I heard that they were told that they were going to have some input into how this was all going to play out. And kind of looked at me. I was like, And I said, and they tell me that the only thing they've had any input in was the color of the rug. It's not the
Oh,
renovation that's the problem.
wow.
It's the way the renovation was presented to them. How did you communicate to them? And at the end of
Yeah.
it, they could have put like the Buckingham Palace. They could have put on everything that would never have been right because they were
Right.
doing something that never happened. And I said, that's where people start losing trust in the
Hmm.
people that are leading them because they say they're not of their word,
Hmm.
they're not following through. And I'm just going to be, like when you get angry, I say your back goes up. That's exactly what happens. And I said, that's what happened in this situation. I'm sure. Um,
Yeah.
so, and then another thing he said to me earlier on, he said, we don't have time for this organizational culture stuff. And then he told me the story. And I said, that is a really great story because it really highlights the areas that where the breakdown was in your communication.
Uh-huh.
It allows you to, next time when you're doing something like this, to kind of, really think about it and say, what do I need to say and what do I need to do?
Well, saying and doing is sometimes two different things, and
Right.
that's another place where I know that as an executive coach, I'm
Mhm.
sure that you are able to identify where there's a disconnect between words and action.
Exactly.
Yeah, that'll ruin that trust as well, for sure. So tell me about the five pillars of your framework.
So the five pillars are basically starting out with, of course, assessment of the organization, and then we go through each step, like the presented of the information, of putting together a plan on how you're going to do this, and then looking at the impact of it on ROI, because everybody wants to know, why am I doing this? Is it going to make any,
Right.
especially if you're a leader and you're putting money into this, you want to, of course, get something out of it. So I really take those, 4 to 5 pillars, depending on the situation. And one of the things I say to the people that I work with, I have seen this happen so much in my career that a consultant comes in,
Uh-huh.
do a big assessment, they throw the book on your desk and say, go forth and multiply.
Right.
And they give no guidance after that. And I said, I made a decision myself that I was not going to be that kind of consultant. I
Right.
set up framework where we look at it 3 months, 6 months, and look out to see, is this thing still working? Because sometimes things can fall by the wayside or
Oh
change.
yeah.
You really have to keep your eye on it if you want to get something out of it. So that's how I really think it. That's how I believe it needs to work.
Absolutely. You can't just throw it back onto them for the activities. Uh, uh, There, there's accepting a recommendation, and then there's actually putting together the projects and the activities and the communications and the hard work,
Yes,
basically, to
right,
get it to work for sure.
exactly.
And you've mentioned communication being an issue several times, and I 100% agree with you. What have you found over the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years when we've been inundated with, the internet and messaging and email and I mean, there's eight different places I have to go in my work every day to check status or to see communication. One of the things that I'm running into in my practice is how do I get people's attention
Mhm.
on the important things?
Right,
Because there's so much. It's over communication, and half of it doesn't matter,
right, exactly.
right? How have you tackled, or have you had that problem, and how have you tackled it?
Um, it's like a funnel.
Yeah,
Has
yeah.
it has to work like a funnel. Well, things are going to come up, and a prioritization of what you're going to do is extremely important, and
Mhm.
knowing how to prioritize what those things are. So I tell people that the way to really get a handle on this is look at. I do this thing called a flow diagram, and it goes through what's great about this organization, what needs to be changed, and then at the end it talks about where do we want to see ourselves in the next year, what's currently going on, what do we want to see this be. And it really works well because it's very visual,
Hmm.
and people really like it because I always say start out on the positive, don't start on the negative.
Oh, for sure.
Asking a client what's great about this organization, tell me the things that are great about it. And then Joe was saying, so what kinds of things do you feel could be a little bit better than they are? Um, I'll if I can share a story with you.
Sure.
So I was working with this healthcare organization, and they called me in because they were having a problem on one floor in the facility. One floor, only one.
Okay.
And I thought, that's odd. Uh,
Yeah.
so I came in, and the first group that I met with were the nurses. And they always say, if you want to know what's going on, ask a nurse.
Oh, yes, for sure. 100% agree.
They were telling me about this idea that had come up, that they're gonna outsource triage, so the nurses wouldn't have to do it. So, but that's fine. But the problem was they told them on a Friday that it was going to happen on Monday. So they had no way to prepare this outside agency, and share their information with them about what they see at all.
Oh, dear.
And I remember I had all these sheets of paper. I was writing on sheets of paper and putting them on the wall. And the CEO came in and she looked around. She said, "See, that's what I mean. They were always blaming us." And I was like, "Oh, isn't that?" I said, "This is not about blame,
No.
about improvement. Where are areas you can
Mhm.
improve?" And then I went down to the physicians, and that was a whole another thing. Physicians
Yeah.
crying, and it was really bad.
Oh,
When
no.
a doctor cries, you know you're in trouble. And then I went to the front line, and they basically gave me the whole picture. Okay, now I can put it all together. So when I went back to the CEO, I said, "This is what I think needs to happen, and you need to really focus on making your communication clearer, along with some other things." I didn't do the big assessment. I
Yeah.
kind of, took all the information that people had given me and kind of synthesized that, and then went to the CEO to say, "Hey, you know, this could be a plan."
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I am so proud of this organization because they took it on. The CEO put aside their ego and said,
Uh-huh.
"I've got to do this. I've got to make this better." And over time, they just got a big grant. They've done all kinds of things. Great things have happened to them because they got great employees now,
Yeah.
and
The
the
employees
employees
feel
know what's
heard.
going on. Mhm.
Yeah. And that's, I think both of the examples that both the stories that you've shared with me have kind of drilled down to one of the biggest misses that leadership often has is they do not involve the people who are impacted by their decisions in those decisions
Right,
in a timely fashion. They just, when an organization's leadership operates on that I'm the boss and here's how it's going to be kind of mindset, it doesn't work anymore. We're not in that industrial revolution anymore. We're in a whole different situation where people want to be heard. They want to have input. So thank you for those stories. You're exactly right. And the communication, it's not just about the clarity of the words, it's about the timing.
right, exactly,
And that's something that a lot of people forget about too, is, um, oftentimes I'll work with clients and I'm asking, okay, leadership team or CEO or whoever is sponsoring the project or the change that we're dealing with, can you please send out this communication at this time?
right, right,
Because and a lot of times they'll miss it and then I'm like scrambling. Yeah, so the timing is everything
right. I
on
mean,
that kind of
I
thing.
was doing some work with self-directed teams. This was years ago.
Yeah, I remember those days.
I was in banking,
Oh
and
yeah.
I worked in a very secure area of the bank where most of the cash came in. And these people were in like glassed in areas, cameras, everything on them.
Wow.
And I said to myself, well, I was walking around with a supervisor, and I asked her, "Why do you think? Why do they do it that way?" And she said, "That's the way we've always done it." I said,
Uh-huh.
"That's not the answer." I didn't say it to her, but I said, "That's not the answer." So then I started thinking about how do I give them some autonomy, because it is confined. It is, there's rules and regulations and all those things that are happening. How do I give them some ability to have say over what they do? So I started calling them all together. I said, from now on, you are going to set yourselves up in your rooms, the rooms that with the machines that you work best with, and work on and look at the various money that was coming in, and count that money. And I said, and every day you're going to decide how you're going to do it. They were like, what? I said, no, you're going to have say over how you do the work. And at the beginning, someone said to me, well, you're the manager. I said,
Oh,
I am, but I'm not the one doing the work. So I want you to use your expertise to make this run smoother. And it was amazing. These were low paid individuals. They didn't make a lot of money, but they grabbed onto this. They loved it. I would see
yes.
them in the morning setting themselves up and stuff. And it came a point in time where my manager, director, said, Janice, we're going to have to stop those meetings. Now, they were only 5 to 10 minutes. They were 10 minutes tops. And I said, no, well, why? They're working. And she said, no, we don't. We have too much money in the vault. And, a lot of money had come in and she wanted it all counted at the same time. And I said to her, I really have to push back on this because they're doing a much better job for the organization if you just give them some time. Not going to happen. So I said, you can only push so far, and then
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
you have to give in. So I came in one morning and I was in a glassed-in office myself, and I was sitting in the office and I looked out over the floor. And it was like 8 o'clock, and nobody was on the floor. I'm like, where's everybody? I got up, I looked, stuck my head out of my office, looked down the hall, and they're all down there meeting. Because when you empower people, you can't take it away.
Right.
You know, they were felt empowered to do this, and they knew that it was really helping them.
Yes. Good for them.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I love it when an organization and the people in it take control and really they start working together rather than playing blame games or politics, when they're really just more interested in, okay, how can I do my job better? How can I help my other people do their jobs better? How can we serve our customers better?
Right.
I mean, that should be the whole thought, not what if I get in trouble, you know?
And
No
like I,
one, no
yeah,
one wants to work like that.
I say, you can't take it away once you start. But eventually, this went by with the money, and they went back to it. And I've never seen people blossom like that before.
That's great. That's perfect. I've had a couple of instances like that in my career, so we know we're on the right track when that happens.
Right. Right.
So we're nearing time. So what I would like to ask is, how can people get hold of you to get to request your services or to see what you do and see if you can help them?
Well, my email is jbrathwaite@worktransformations.com. And that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. Uh,
Okay.
yes, and I'm working with a client now, but I'm really looking to build the business. And, I believe and truly believe that there's something here that people need to hear themselves.
Absolutely. Well, and things are changing. I mean, I grew up in banking in the 90s when there were I lived through 85 mergers and acquisitions.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
So that's where I got kind of my start in watching cultures clash and come together and all of that. And so right now, healthcare is going through a lot of that, as well as several other industries. So I know that your work is much needed for sure. All right, so I have three questions that I
Okay.
ask everyone at the end of every episode. And my first one requires for you to close your eyes just for a moment and tell me what you see in your mind's eye when I say wise woman.
Say the words again.
Wise woman, what do you see?
someone who is very sure of themselves, has direction, and they're moving in that direction. They're able to analyze. Somebody who analyzes things to make
Hmm.
sure they're on the right track. They don't just let things lay there. And somebody who's really has a passion for what they're doing.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we oftentimes leave out that passion part.
Exactly.
We really do. We focus on the hard skills and leave out the soft skills. So I'm glad you said that. My second question is, where do you like to roam, Janice?
Where do I like to roam?
Yes.
I love where I am. I love Salem, Massachusetts. It's
Mm-hmm.
called the Witch City, if people don't know it, the city. But I love that I have to be near the ocean.
Mm.
I I don't feel complete if like I said to my son, used to live in Chicago, and he said, "Well, there's a big lake." I said, "That's not an ocean. That's a lake.
Yes, it's not the same. I
Not gonna be
know.
the same. There are waves in it. Not the same thing."
Yeah.
So I think I get my most of my energy. Every once in a while, I'll go sit and just look out over the water. When I'm
Mm.
trying to figure something out or whatever, and just kind of calms me and keeps me, focused.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I firmly believe, and I spoke with another one of my wise women the other day and did a podcast with her, and we talked about how different parts of nature imbue us with energy.
Yep.
And, I talked about being barefoot and, the grass and feeling the ground. It really does. It's an energy that we miss when we don't get outside enough, I think. And the ocean for sure. I'm in Orlando, Florida, so,
Oh,
you know,
okay. I
I have to drive a little bit, but it's still right there. So I love that. Okay, my final question is, what makes you restless, but in a good way?
think building a business makes you
Mm.
restless because you're always trying to figure out the next step. How do I get the next client? What do I need to do? This whole experience for me is like getting another MBA. Starting a
Oh,
business
yeah.
is is very difficult, but very rewarding because whatever you put into it is what you get out of it. You're
Yep.
not you are depending on a client, getting a client, but your work, your actual physical work, that's what kind of will help push you forward.
Yes. Would you go
So
back?
would I go back? Never.
Yeah. You know what? Every single entrepreneur I've spoken with has said the exact same thing.
Yeah, I should have done this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You
Same here. Same here. I've had my company since 2018.
Mhm.
And yeah, I would resist going back.
Yeah, and not my
Yeah.
thing. It's like one time I left the bank and I didn't have a job, and my son said to me, "Well, you could always go back to banking." I said, "You know what? I'd rather be out on the street than
Yeah. It is empowering and being an entrepreneur.
yeah.
It is the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it's also the most rewarding. I would agree with you there for
What
sure.
you put into it is what you get out."
You're exactly right. Well, Janice, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Good.
Folks, I will put Janice's email in the show notes so that you can get a hold of her if you have a need and you'd like to reach out and see what her services provide.
Well, thank you so
Janice,
much.
thank you again.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Julie Noonan here. Thank you so much for listening to Roaming with Restless Women. If you're a successful senior woman leader who would like to be on this program, please visit podcast.intuitivewisdomcoach.com. If you enjoyed this interview, please share this episode on social media and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Your thumbs ups and reviews go a long way.